Okay, let's do a quick round of intro before we start here. Do we want to start in the back? Go.
Yeah. You guys hear me? Awesome. Yeah, so Gal, leading the business development and growth for DeBridge for already almost a few years now.
Awesome. My name is Ayt. I'm part of the partnerships team at Wintermute. I've been at Wintermute for the last 4 years. I actually joined Wintermute as an intern and been able to progress a bit slowly and slowly now head some of the partnership side at Wintermute, both on the market making side and the OTC side.
Hi everyone, my name is Evgeny. I'm the founder of Re7 Capital. We're an investment firm with a focus on DeFi, basically running DeFi hedge funds, and our kind of flagship strategy is a stablecoin yield fund.
Hi, I'm Rand, co-founder of Orderly. We're the world's first DEX launchpad. You can launch your own DEX on top of us in minutes, your own brand, your colors, logos, and we've traded about 180 billion cumulative volumes since last year.
Sounds good. So I'm Francesco. I'm leading developer relation at Consensus. That's the mother company of like MetaMask, Infura, Linea, and I'm excited. I mean, stablecoin is one of the big topic that has been kind of like closing the loop from like off ramping to on ramping and off ramping. And let's start with kind of like a little bit kind of like a spicy topic. Like what are kind of like the biggest kind of like adoption driver that you see for stablecoin today? Could be drivers, could be challenges. Everybody agreed, and we see volumes around the stables increasing. But do you see there's still some kind of like bottleneck challenges, and also like on the other side drivers that are like accelerating this adoption? Anybody can jump in. Yes.
Yeah, I can kind of chime in here a little bit. So I think for the first time in the crypto space, for the last 1 year and for 2024, we've seen a massive use case in the crypto industry, and that is basically stablecoins. It's one of the biggest use cases that came about in the last couple of years. The institutions have actually noticed now heavily are using it. I think the biggest drivers is predominantly being driven by payments processing, and that's always been kind of the main driver for most of the stablecoin flow. You have a lot of geopolitical situations that kind of disrupt your TradFi rails, etc., etc. But I think like the main, let's say, limitation of the stablecoin growth overall. To be fair, stablecoins have risen and grown for the last 2 years quite substantially. It's basically at all-time highs in terms of the supplies. So in terms of the limitations, I do believe that it's basically on the regulation side. Not many jurisdictions in the world recognize stablecoins, and that's why you see a lot of institutions not really adopting some of the stablecoins as fast as you would expect. But to be fair, I think stablecoins have grown quite massively in the last 2 years, and that is also due to the fact the institutions are taking a lot of part in it.
I think maybe to jump in on my side, I think the most important thing with the stablecoins is actually distribution, right? So we've seen that Circle is paying more than about 50% of their revenue to Coinbase. We've seen the tender that Hyperliquid did, and the competition between stablecoins to launch on Hyperliquid was just insane, and some of them were willing to give up basically all of their margin. So with banks, with Stripe coming into the stablecoin space, ultimately it all comes down to distribution, and I think we're going to see massive consolidation in the space.
Yeah, I also have some thoughts around this. We're definitely a big chunk of our flows are stablecoins, of course, between different stablecoins on different chains. And yeah, definitely in line with you on that. A big wave for stablecoin adoption is going to be payments, as it's quite fragmented globally. Really seeing this connectivity between TradFi and the usage of stablecoins for settlement, and I think the USPs are definitely there. And it would be, it's like not a very obvious adoption of stablecoins, but under the hood, it's very relevant in terms of the numbers, the metrics. So yeah.
Yeah, so we're part of the distribution for stablecoins as DEX infrastructure, and for sure that we get approached by all types of stablecoins. From regulated to delta neutral, and even now, I mean, now there's a JPY stablecoin coming out. There's a KRW, more and more regulated. There's digital dirham here. I think you're going to see a lot of kind of the merge between stablecoins and fiat, or replacing fiat even, because they're all regulated and then backed by tangible assets. So I mean, for us, like it's a huge explosive growth, and we just apply utility to these stablecoins, whether it's through yields with vaults or they can use it as collateral for perpetuals trading.
I think like distribution is obviously like a main driver. But I think also like there are obviously like different challenges, but I think like there is no way to not saying that, you know, stable is one of the main use case today that is adopted for different like use case. You know, I'm a big, you know, I see a lot of like remittance use case being adopted. Obviously there is regulation involved, but I also like wonder what are like the main use case around stables that you see kind of like, you know, undervalued or like they're already kind of there as kind of like main PMF.
Well, so far the main PMF has obviously been, you know, gambling and speculation, right? So using stablecoins as collateral at centralized exchanges or these days DEXs. Hopefully we will move beyond just, you know, the gambling world and beyond the on-chain world into something that's, you know, payments and things that exist in the real world. And the other bit that I think is very important to get right, and one of the, ironically, the blockers for stablecoin growth is the whole term stablecoin, unfortunately, is broken. And the word stablecoin doesn't mean anything anymore. Because I would argue that if you have an asset that is backed by, let's say, treasuries in the background, and then you have another asset which is basically, you know, algorithmic Ponzi stablecoin like Terra, you know, calling them both stablecoins is probably wrong. And then if you have another asset that looks like a stablecoin, but in reality it's a tokenized and packaged hedge fund or a packaged structured product, that's also not really a stablecoin. And then the confusion around that and the noise is frankly one of the biggest blockers. So we work a lot with very large TradFi institutions, and you know we walk into a meeting and they're like, well, we heard about some stablecoin collapsing. We're like, well, actually it's not a stablecoin, it's a tokenized hedge fund, or it's a tokenized structured product, but the real stablecoins still continue to exist. So once we kind of nail the terminology correctly, then I think the use cases are going to proliferate very quickly.
Any other take around use cases?
Well, for just to that point, I think, yeah, there's a lot of issues with the word stablecoin, but I think like tokenized asset management, and then it's going to be very big, and kind of stablecoin gives that liquidity and interoperability, right? Which makes it more native to crypto. I think that use case could be huge, you know, if done properly, right? And you have all these kind of fake stablecoins depegging, but I mean, we have vaults ourselves. I mean, it's not the LPs aren't tokenized, but like the amount of demand and then the increased efficiency for these things, I think it's unparalleled relative to like Cayman funds for traditional hedge funds. I mean, they're not really adopted by institutions yet due to all types of reasons, but I can see this piece going, and they're mostly denominated by stable coins, right?
Yeah.
These vaults, I can see it being. I mean, they are quite big already, but I can see it being like very, very big in terms of the size of like the traditional hedge funds and asset management, or even all of these asset managements and LP tokens coming on chain. Whether the funds they're tokenized or it's in the form of vaults or in the form of stable coins, I think it's going to be huge. So I think that's actually a very big use case of stablecoins.
I mean, you touch even on the Japanese stablecoin. I think this is like huge, right? One things I'm also like quite fan in terms of also like seeing the use case around stables is liquidity pool rebalancing. I think right now it's still missing a couple of parts, but I think like all the LP rebalancer are on stables. We see also like volumes increasing. Any other kind of like use case that you see? Obviously, I think settlement around centralized indexes. I think that's also like one big thing.
To be fair, like Evgeny and Ran covered it very, very well. I think it's pretty much a consensus that everything is denominated in stablecoins right now in the crypto space. Even the flow for like fiat on centralized exchanges is way, way, way smaller than what you see for stablecoins. Stablecoins basically drive the trading volumes across any other asset in the crypto space. And I think just like what guys have covered very well is that the whole market is denominated in stablecoins, and that's the main use case. That stablecoins is basically widely used pretty much everywhere in the whole ecosystem.
Nice, nice. And if you're looking on the other side around institutional adoption, like one question that I was writing it down is, do we still kind of like, you know, there are things that we're missing for an institutional to use stablecoin more at scale, or you think we have all instruments out there?
So personally on the Wintermute side, because we do definitely interact with a lot of institutions on our side, both regulated and unregulated. And I would say the main kind of, I would say, limitation to some of these institutions really start using stablecoins is kind of two things. First of all, it's actually the ability to use them. So not many companies are, let's say, creative or in a way trying to be out of scope in what they used to do on the TradFi side. So they're not really keen to experiment, for example, and they just don't really want to try it out themselves. Because, and with, again, we kind of expect this to change in the nearest future. And the second side is, I would say, mostly on the regulatory side, is that people don't really, they're pretty much afraid to really touch it for the time being. And I would say that two things, basically on the regulatory side and the infrastructure side, so not everybody is willing to, say, custody the stablecoins themselves. Not everybody is willing to actually transfer themselves, etc. So I think that's one of the key things that we've seen. But in all honesty, pretty much all the biggest institutions out there already are using kind of stablecoins and already kind of testing it out. So I would say the majority of them are already working on it and looking into it.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think just from speaking to a lot of our power users and other institutions, they really like to stick to the existing workflows. So if stablecoins want to be adopted by them, then it needs to be integrated by the banks that they use, by the solutions that they use. It needs to be added into their existing workflow seamlessly, and not a separate workflow that fragments their existing workflow. So.
Yeah, this is a good point, right? I see a lot of like models out there. I mean, for example, Chainlink, like 8 months ago, they launched these modules, like enterprise like modules. They're already kind of like compelling, AML compliant, like for actually institution to actually use stables. I think like this module kind of ways make really sense, because as exactly what you say, like I don't think there is like people will build the customized stack. They want to actually have like a specific like interface or modules to do the settlement. Any other like kind of like enterprise kind of like comments around around stable adoptions? Maybe even on the government side, right? The Japanese stablecoin is very interesting, right? Because we're hearing more kind of like KYC both need to be done on the on-ramping and the off-ramping side. So there is also these modules that need to be settled. Yeah.
Well, and UAE has been paving the way as well for the whole world with AED stablecoins. I think there are quite a few of them in the works. We've had there are companies like World Liberty with their stablecoin who are trying to win like very large businesses all over the world to settle.
Great.
So it's definitely kind of a gold rush basically to lock in a share of the market.
Are you guys afraid about like stablecoin kind of fragmentation in terms of liquidity, or you feel like there will be one main we will see like big volumes of stable, the other one will fade away? I tweeted out a couple of months ago, is every time I'm waking up in the morning I see a new stable popping. So I just want to understand, is it like fragmentation a good things, bad things? Yeah.
Well, the market usually finds a way. Right, so it's reasonable to expect that very large stablecoins will get larger, and there'll be a lot of small ones that will just be very niche or non-existent. And liquidity fragmentation, I don't really think it's an issue, because someone who wants to source liquidity will source it very quickly. Maybe it's just going to be a little bit more expensive. And again, over time, like the share of the smaller stablecoins will dwindle, because if you don't own distribution, then no one will ever discover your stablecoin.
Yeah, I think fragmentation is good. We're at this economies of scale stage where liquidity and price efficiency isn't too much of a problem. And the liquidity is there. It's more of a question of transparency and creating this element of competition and raising the standards. So it can be a good thing.
Yeah, I think fragmentation for DeBridge is really, really good. But on the Wintermute side, I would say, just like also Evgeny mentioned, it does get pricey for us as a market maker to price some of these assets when a lot of that liquidity is very fragmented. It is really hard for us to actually trade in size when liquidity is really fragmented, because there are also many risks on the settlement side, on the bridge side. And so I think the main issue for Wintermute, for example, on our side, the liquidity does get a lot more scarce in that way. And so that leads to us pricing some assets way wider than we could have. So hopefully at some point, there's going to be a consolidation of all that liquidity. There are going to be big winners. And just like what we have right now, we have big winners that mostly and widely are used. And so that's where Wintermute is. Wintermute doesn't really trade in some of the other niche chains. We currently only trade on like almost 5 to 6 like L1s and a lot of the other L2s. But we don't really touch others. because again, it's fragmented and there's not that much for us to take as well. So it does kind of create the main issue that is us basically pricing a lot wider and pricing that in.
Maybe to build what you're saying on fragmentation, like are you guys believing in an horizontal kind of like stablecoin business model or more like verticalized use case?
So on our side, we definitely don't want to take a stance or have a strong position in what stablecoins are better than ours, or that we want to say or push for somebody else. We are very agnostic to chains. We're very agnostic to stablecoins.
Yep.
We want everybody to prosper, and so we work with everybody. So we don't really have a strong view, but we definitely see big winners. You've got USDC, USDT that have proven the way, and then now you've got Ethena with their USDE, basically proving completely different type of scope of a stablecoin. And I do believe that there is a use case for each one of them as well. It basically is depending as to what users you're tailoring towards to. Yeah.
What's your guys' opinion on generalized, verticalized?
Like, I think the moat is on a few things. One is regulations, right? Like, if, you know, like the ADI Foundation, they launched their chain, they're going to come out with a digital dirham, and that's going to get distribution, and it's going to be regulated. They have the license, and it's going to give it distribution through one of the banks here. So, I mean, that's like two pieces of the moat, right? Distribution and regulations. Like the JP1, the JPYC, that's the only one that's going to be regulated in Japan, and they have distribution through Line.
Yes.
So that's huge. I think that's like kind of unparalleled moat. And then the third one, I think, is kind of the utility, right? Like, but this part is less of a moat because people can compete on this easier in terms of the yields that they can get, right, on that piece of on that stable coin, and where it can be used as like utility, let's say, to trade perps. I think it's just these few things.
Yes.
Well, and segmentation will also be a thing, right? Because like Athena may be great for yield purposes, but it's hard to imagine, I know, small and medium enterprises all over the world paying each other in Athena. Right? Why would you bother? Like, are you comfortable accepting that risk? Are you not comfortable accepting that risk? So probably we'll have, stable coins for payments. Stable coins are basically wrapped, vault products or investment products, and these categories will just exist with the degree of separation.
Yeah, I would say that the innovation curve for stablecoins internally is in its mature stages right now. And now it's more around the topic of what you guys mentioned, regulation, accessibility, these kind of things.
I think part of the game is also like distribution, right? Is vendor relationships. I mean, this market, I'm kind of like shifting a bit, like also like my view, right? We need to also go where users are, instead actually like, educating the user, hey, come use this table, right? Meaning distribution methods are through kind of, could be even like Web2 vendors, right? That have already this distribution. So I think that's a big part of the game. It could be payment processor, could be merchants integration, right? I think like a lot of like, especially like infrastructure on stable, they're actually like creating a lot more strong relationship with like vendors, so that actually like the payment itself is happening on a stable without actually the user interacting with the stable infrastructure directly. Yep. So this kind of account abstraction is something that need to be done. I don't know if you guys agree on that. If you see that coming, if need to be faster, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, abstraction is critical because you want people to just click a button and something happens. So intense account abstraction, all the work that DeBridge is doing, and companies like that is absolutely critical because user experience is absolutely horrible. So I've been personally using DeFi for over 5 years now, and the more I use it, the more I hate it because it's just horrible, right? The number of clicks you have to do to perform a very basic financial transaction is just a nightmare. And the more chains we have, the more stable coins we have, the worse it gets. Yes. So the only way for normal human beings to use this is to for all of this to be fully abstracted away, where you shouldn't care. When you're clicking a button to make a payment, whether it moves through Swift or through stablecoins or through whatever else, you should not even care.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm interacting with so many dApps, and every dApps now has a smart account. You need to fund the smart accounts. It's crazy. And one thing you mentioned a bit in around stables is obviously the cross-chain UX, right? I think this is also like kind of like an iceberg because one want to still like interact with a specific stable, but like doing the cross-chain payments. Just an example around DeFi is kind of a nightmare, right? I don't know. Yeah, go for it.
I think for Wintermute as a market maker, we don't really care so much about the user experience as such. We only care about volumes, volatility,
liquidity, right?
and obviously liquidity, and so basically like some price action and events, etc. Because at the end of the day, we only connect via the APIs. So on our side, especially from our POV, we don't really care as much about that whole user experience. However, for the adoption of people to actually start trading a little bit more, for more volume to come in, there has to be some sort of a bigger improvement on the user experience side. So me personally, I completely agree with Evgeny on that side. It takes too many clicks to do one single item every single day. But yeah, it's also kind of another things that I think the main topics of, I would say, the last couple of months is there is no major catalyst in the market just yet. And the biggest catalyst previously was always retail coming in. And retail will always come in, new people will come into the market when they will finally understand, and it will be way easier for them to use it. And to be fair, I think people have been talking about user experience on the crypto side for the last like 6-7 years. And not so much has changed. So, but fairly, the market is evolving very fast. Maybe we'll see a lot more kind of progressing on that end. And but that's kind of the Wintermute's POV as well.
I think also developer tooling is coming up fast, right? But we need more also tooling for like building, how would you say, like communicative highlands, right? Because right now, if you look at cross-chain SDKs for specific tooling, it's not there yet. How we can solve like cross-chain stable, like this usability? Like, do you see like a solution out there, or do you see something like, oh, it will depends on the user side. It will be on the merchant side to provide this abstraction so that people are using stuff like, I see already like Omni accounts coming. The people interact with only one account, and on the infra, the payment provider is doing the settlements. Or how we solve this?
I guess there are a few things, right? So over time, probably lots of chains should finally die. Like at some point, it's probably a good idea to not launch new L1s anymore, or even L2s, because we probably have enough of them. So over time, they'll obviously continue to exist, but if no one is using them, then that problem kind of solves itself. That's kind of number one. Number two, account abstraction and intents and all the tooling. But also, I think we're going to just, like, when Stripe and Tempo are fully live, it's hard to imagine like serious merchants going and doing payments on like random L2s. So inevitably, the payment flow will probably shift to the very specific, well, you can't even call them chains because they're private, right? So just private databases, basically. And then, the on-chain world will continue to kind of exist in a bit of a clunky universe.
Yeah, so I really think that once stablecoin adoption is hitting its mature stages, and like we're in this mature stage of the market, then with merchants and traders, and even just apps like financial app users, they won't even have to really think about needing to have a presence on multiple different chains. They can just stick to one network that suits them best, whether it's a merchant that wants to charge $100 for a product that they're selling. They can just receive their stablecoins on that specific chain while still utilizing infrastructure like ours to enable a wide accessibility of people to pay from multiple different assets on multiple different chains. So this way you can a merchant doesn't need to have this presence on multiple different networks. They can just use connective tissues like ours to enable this universal accessibility, essentially.
I think also at the end is the real powers come around distribution and who has a merchant relationship and distribution to direct users, right? Yeah. I think, is there something that we kind of didn't touch today that you want to mention? That you think is still relevant, right? Could be, we didn't touch on kind of risk around stables, but I don't know, I think it's less relevant. You maybe have some other points you want to touch that you think everybody should know.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned earlier on the topic of abstraction, that's how we see the next wave of adoption for the next 1+ years. it's not about adding new. It's not really. We're not at this stage where we need to add new features for the user. It's about removing and abstracting complexities. So users not having to think about gas, fees, reverted transactions, MEV, all these things that at the end of the day no one really cares about. So we're moving away from this asset first paradigm to more this behavior-centric paradigm. So for example, how can we make a user not have to think so much about, let's say I'm a trader closing my position on Hyperliquid and I want to deposit liquidity on Solana. How do I achieve this goal without having to think about what's happening in the middle? So that's how we're thinking now.
I agree on the abstracting the way also to do things, right? Like a quick example, like for example on our extension, like we unified the swap and the bridge, right? A lot of people were like, hey, I don't want to do that. But a lot of people like coming into the space, they say, oh, that's great. And people don't really like know if they're bridging or swapping, but I think like that's just one example. But I think even like when you're trying to actually abstract cross-chain examples, that's the only way is actually like to go through like a smart account kind of system or going and abstract like a more like maybe even a centralized and you do the Web3 rail on the back end. So it's the responsibility on the infra side, right? Or the payments provider. Anything else you guys want to do? Yeah.
I think like the only misunderstood, let's say, not risk, but something that people sometimes tend to not take into account is that at the end of the day, most of the stable coins that are issued right now, they're against US dollar, right? They're pegged to US dollar. And US dollar is prone to some sort of inflation. So one of the items that I think people tend to kind of misunderstand is that at the end of the day, when you do hold stable coins and when you do exchange your stable coins, you also, if it's from the investment POV, you're also prone to inflation. You're prone to you having exposure to US dollar, right? It's stablecoin back to the US dollar. And I think at some point, maybe the market will evolve a little bit and they'll try to find something more interesting or experiment. I think one of the great examples is like flat coins. I'm not sure you heard about this. Like it's, I think one of the great examples is the Ampleford guys who issued spot. It's basically CPI pegged stablecoin. And so you kind of protect it against the inflation, right? So you basically, it tracks what you could have bought like 10 years ago to today, right? So I think that's another way, like another thing for you to consider is that at the end of the day, when you do trade with USDT, USDC, or you hold them, you're not just holding a stable coin, you're also holding and having exposure to US dollar. So it's kind of also something macro and inflationary type of consideration that you want to take into account.
That's a good point. Anything else? I'm feeling like I'm bombarding you guys with questions. I don't know if you guys have any questions, right? So people are not like sleeping. I mean, we touch like different on risk challenges, use case. Any question, guys? I see we have like some minutes left. Good? Huh? Just listening is good? Come on, you need to be active here. Huh?
I think what I would love to kind of hear the opinion of other panelists as well is how the trading market is kind of evolving quite fast as well. And so you've got your AMMs, you've got your order books, you've got different matching engines, you've got some off-chain matching engines. So on off-chain side could be something on OTC and et cetera, et cetera. Some of those have pros and cons. People use these different venues differently for whatever reasons. But I'm curious to also get panelists' thoughts about proprietary AMMs, which became kind of a thing in the last like 6 to 9 months. So I'd love to kind of get your thoughts, guys, as to do you see proprietary AMMs being kind of the next wave of how people actually match and how they trade? Is that kind of the next trading experience? Keen to get your thoughts.
It's a good question. I kind of feel that liquidity is always converging in some shape or form anyway, because the moment there is a spread between, let's say there's a very inefficient AMM and, and Wintermute, right? Well, then Wintermute will go and, arbit. Yep. Right. If we as a fund see mispricing or whatever, we will go and arbit, right? So liquid markets are by design very, very efficient. They may not be very efficient over a super short period of time, but long enough they always are. So these things will converge, like whether it's a private AMM, a normal AMM, an order book, or an OTC, like it's all going to be one global pool of capital. And with kind of DeFi convergence, maybe that's one thing we didn't really touch on kind of CeFi and DeFi converging, right? So you are a customer of Coinbase Wallet. You can borrow against your BTC and ETH with stablecoins, and those stablecoins are sourced on chain. So whether it's lending, whether it's trading, we kind of feel that these worlds will converge and collide, and in fact they probably already have. Like, maybe a question back to you. Like, are you seeing much like ARB opportunities for like stable coins between CeFi and DeFi?
To be fair, not so much, because it's like in the space, it's not just us. There are also so many other market makers that are trying to close these ARBs. I think back in 2021, 2022, 2023, that was very interesting, and we've seen a lot wider spreads. But specifically with actually, for one good thing about fragmented liquidity is that not many market makers are willing to take that risk to go into other chains. And Wintermute does. We sometimes can experiment, we can go into other chains, and we can take that risk, and we will basically take that way wider ARB than any others. We do see that, but that gap is closing as we see a lot more trading firms coming into the market and kind of being a lot more exposed on the DeFi side. And also even the spread between your usual like top 10 alts, for example, is also closing quite fast as well. And you also like, for example, this year, the biggest winner of all, the Hyperliquid guys did a tremendous job. They basically changed how people view on-chain trading, right? And so what you see with Hyperliquid is that almost centralized exchange type of volumes have been traded on-chain. And so what that means is that a lot of CeFi, DeFi type of ARBs are also closing down, because Hyperliquid is just so fast, the latency is so low that the ARBs are getting closed quite fast as well. So the spreads are tightening, and so hopefully there's going to be a lot more opportunities in the market that we'll be able to take. But yeah.
That's exactly what I wanted to ask, kind of the spread between centralized versus a decentralized exchange, because
it's still there for sure, and but it's not as wider as it used to be before. Yeah.
So where are the opportunities? This is the question.
Well, I guess
the
the opportunities for what, right? The opportunities for yield, or for trading, or for payments, or whatever. Like they're everywhere. It just depends on what you do. But ultimately, it's like asking, what's the opportunity with the US dollar?
Yeah.
Like, do whatever you want with it.
Yeah, depends on the use case too, right?
Exactly, right? So in the yield space, there's like a million things you can do, and the yields in DeFi are still very, very high, and like on a risk-adjusted basis. But again, that's like, I just keep coming back to like, what is a stable coin, right? Imagine that we have, JP Morgan stable coin and, like a random DeFi stable coin, right? Very, very different things. So things that has to be a standard. And I think unfortunately, or fortunately, or just that's how life is, the standard will be set by, by the banks and eventually the regulator, right? And if you are a random company anywhere in the world, why would you even bother thinking about the nuances of a specific stable coin? So if you see that, JP Morgan has a stable coin, or Deutsche Bank, or whatever, why overthink it, right? Because you gain nothing if you go to a random stable coin, and you lose your job if you get it wrong. So, and people in those positions are in the business of keeping their jobs, not taking unnecessary risk.
I will even answer like, what are the underlying risks of the stable coin? Because people will judge also around volumes. We'll see volumes and we'll judge, okay, this is coming, and I'm more attractive to a volume-based good stable coin with enough kind of distribution, or like on the KYC side, right? If it's a government stable coin that KYC me, like, I can judge based on that.
So the question was proprietary MMs. Is that?
Yeah, on the proprietary MM side, yeah.
Yeah, I can talk a bit more about that. So we have this product called OmniVault. It's a bit like HLP, but it's on-chain deposit withdrawals in 3-hour windows, and it's connected to our orderly smart contracts and also to Binance via Cefu. So then the vault manager can actually trade on both venues while having the funds custodied either in our smart contract or in Cefu, which then mirrors onto Binance. So they have that capability to access Binance liquidity. So it's pretty interesting. People like it, and I think that's kind of where asset management is going to go, which is on-chain deposit withdrawals, a lot of transparency, like we show all the trades and such, but they can access centralized venues. Like, my theory is that most of finance moves on-chain. That's kind of like Hyperliquid's theory, except for things like KYC and fiat on-off ramps. And that's kind of already happening, right? You even have the TradFi assets getting tokenized. People listing RWA perpetuals. We have NASDAQ, S&P perpetuals. And then, so everything kind of merges. in that model. And then proprietary, like the proprietary MM. So then you can call our vault, which is run by a quant firm, which they quote on Orderly, and then they hedge on Binance via the structure. And that's like it's like HLP except it hedges. And this model has been around for a long time, actually, with centralized exchanges, but they just don't tell you about it. They call it like a B-book model, which is in their internal desks, and now Hyperliquid just made that public, and it gives the yields to users, which is great. I mean, we do the same, but I think like this moving all of this on chain and being transparent about it. Again, GMX gains, these are also pool-based trading against users, basically. And that's worked out. So I just see like most of what's happening in CeFi, just moving on chain, being transparent and giving more and more of the value capture to users as like the larger trend. And then these internal or proprietary MMs is just a piece of that.
Yeah, just to add to the venue topic, like essentially we're, from our point of view, we're essentially aggregating all of the liquidity available for users to provide them with the best quote. And at the end of the day, that's all they care about. So whether it's PMM liquidity, prop AMM, standard AMM, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, over time, this space is gonna evolve in terms of who's owning the distribution of liquidity, and the best approach is to provide users with all available options, because that's all they care about at the end of the day.
I mean, I think we all agree that everything is moving kind of like on chain. I still think there will be different trade-offs, like exactly KYC being done on that side. Any other kind of trade-off that you see kind of like happening? Hard, no trade-off. Yeah, everything on chain. That's it. Yeah,
it's the only way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it really depends a lot, right? Because distribution obviously is very tied to also regulation, how you handle data, how you do compliance around the users, and so we will see still a lot of like fragmentation around that, because we see everything cannot also like be on chain, especially right now. Even on KYC, people are starting to debate. We need ZK KYC. We need to start thinking about hashing consumer data. But obviously, this will never happen if we are interacting with government stablecoin, right?
Yeah.
Like there is no way.
And maybe to add to that, like it's also very important to remember that we keep using this word DeFi as an industry, but it's no longer decentralized, right? Because if one day Circle decides to click a button, then DeFi is gone, because they can freeze any stablecoin anywhere. Obviously, they have policies. They hopefully wouldn't do it just because they are having fun, but ultimately, the stablecoins that we're using today, they're completely centralized, and as a result, the whole industry got centralized, and censorship is a real thing. So it would be great to have, a Stripe stablecoin and a truly decentralized stablecoin, and Ampleforth and like Frax tried to do it as well with their FPI, with the inflation stablecoin. They got zero traction. So people just go for the easiest, and I would bet you that most people who are using USDC or USDT, they don't even know they can be frozen at any time.
Oh yeah.
And then good luck on freezing them. And who knows what the criteria are and who will change them and how. So that's not ideal, because it just like defeats the whole purpose of decentralization.
Yeah, I think it's more about do we want to compromise on cyberpunk values? Do you want to actually build Web3 rails? Do you want to accelerate adoption, welcoming more institution and being more compliant on that side? They're all questions, right? That's why all the privacy, and this is another topic for another panel, but all the privacy compliant topics are picking up, right? Because, and I think there will be always like mismatch. The only thing is we also need to care about building a better financial infrastructure, right? And, but in the same time, we need distribution. We cannot build for our own crypto Twitter chamber. That's the reality, right? That's why like we see also, the users that we're building infrastructure today are not the users that are us right now in this room, right? That's why also like we need to think about abstracting really the way and meeting the user where they are.
I have to say one thing though, is that I do believe, and on the Wintermute side as well, that there are always going to be on-chain and off-chain settlement. It will never be. We don't really think that it will always only going to be on-chain at some point. we see a lot of kind of OTC flows on our side, and that's off-chain type of settlements.
Yeah.
And that volume is way larger than what we see on the DeFi side. It's also because all of these different institutions tend to only want to, let's say, face a market maker. They only want to, let's say, not even touch the underlying. So I think it's going to be way long for us to go to the point where, let's say, most of the settlements are only done on chain. So I think it's going to be a lot of hard work for the DeFi side to actually build new products and more compliant products for all the big boys to come in and start actually settling on chain. You see some of them, but I do think that off-chain settlement will not go anywhere. I think it's going to stay as it is. And basically the off-chain matching engine, on-chain matching engine, they will always exist in part to each other, to be fair. It's also because so many different use cases, and that also leads to a lot of different types of stakeholders of the market, participants of the market. They will just do whatever that is in their preference, in my opinion.
Sounds good. Awesome. Any question, guys? We're good to go? No one is sleeping? Good. Awesome, awesome. So big round of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much.